12 rusted culverts. That's what sat in the back corner of the Harlan County surplus yard on a Tuesday morning in late March. Stacked in two crooked rows, streaked orange and brown, some of them dented along the seams, a few with the ends crimped shut from years of pressure and neglect. The county road crew had pulled them from a drainage project on Route 9 and replaced them with new corrugated steel. These old ones weren't worth hauling to the recycler, so they dumped them in the surplus lot and tagged them as scrap, $40 apiece, priced to move them off the property. Total value, $480. Scrap metal, basically. Nobody wanted them. Nobody except Corbett Dane. He walked the rows twice, crouching at each section, running his thumb along the inside diameter, checking the gauge of the metal. The surplus manager, a younger guy named Phil, watched from the doorway of the office trailer and later told the story at least a dozen times, how Corbett spent 20 minutes inspecting pipe that wasn't worth the gas it took to haul it, then paid the full asking price for all 12 without a moment's hesitation. Two of the road crew laughed out loud. Corbett didn't seem to notice. He just backed his flatbed up and started loading. This made absolutely no sense to anyone who watched it happen, and it wouldn't, not until the following October, when the rain came and the county learned what Corbett Dane had understood for years. If you enjoy stories about farm wisdom that took decades to earn and cost nothing to pass on, subscribe and join us here. Tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to know how far this story travels. Now let's find out what Corbett saw in those rusted culverts that nobody else could. Corbett had farmed the same 280 acres outside Kettlemore, Kentucky, since he was 26 years old. His father had worked it before him, and his grandfather before that. The land sat at the base of a long ridge, the kind of terrain that looked gentle on a road map, but told a different story when it rained hard. 3 drainages came off that ridge and converged near the lower third of Corbett's property. In a dry year, they were just shallow ditches. In a wet year, they moved. His neighbor to the east, a cattle operation run by a man named Dale Sutherfield, had lost a stretch of his access lane twice in 7 years. The farm south of Corbett's, the Mangan family's row crop operation, had a low corner that flooded so reliably every spring that they just budgeted around it. Everyone in the area understood the water. They'd learned to live with it. Corbett had decided, somewhere around age 40, that living with it wasn't the same as understanding it. He'd started keeping a rainfall log 15 years before GPS or satellite imagery made it fashionable. A simple spiral notebook, dated entries, inches recorded, timing noted. He walked his ditches after every significant rain event and marked where water moved fastest, where it pooled, where it carved new channels. He took elevation readings with a hand level he borrowed from a retired road grader operator named Virgil Couch, who lived 3 miles east of town and spent his retirement sitting on a folding chair by his mailbox most mornings. Virgil was the one who first explained to Corbett what a watershed decision point was. "People see a flood and think it came from the sky," Virgil told him once, handing him coffee in a styrofoam cup. "But the rain that floods you fell 2 miles uphill. Your problem isn't rain, it's where the land sends it." That sentence lodged somewhere permanent in Corbett's thinking. After he loaded the culverts and drove them home, he didn't install any of them right away. He stacked them along the fence line behind his machine shed and spent the next 2 weeks walking the lower pasture every morning, checking elevations with a transit level his son Garrett had helped him set up. He marked stakes, he ran string lines, he photographed the existing ditch openings, which were undersized, 18-inch culverts under a lane that was trying to handle the runoff from 40 acres of sloped cropland above it. His son asked him straight out one evening, what was the plan? Corbett pointed to the lower drainage ditch, the one that ran along his property boundary before crossing under his main farm lane and continuing south toward the county road. He told Garrett that the existing culverts under those crossings were original infrastructure, 15-inch corrugated plastic, installed sometime in the 90s. He said the watershed draining through those points was now larger than it was when those culverts went in. Timber had been cleared from the upper ridge over the years, removing the root systems that slowed surface runoff. He said when a hard rain came and those ditches filled faster than the culverts could pass water through, it would overtop his lane. And when a lane overtops, it erodes from below. And when it erodes from below, it fails, cutting his farm off just like everyone else's. Garrett looked at the stakes his father had placed. Then he looked at the 12 culverts behind the machine shed. You're going to double the drainage capacity before they even know there's a problem. Corbett didn't say yes or no. He just said they'd better get the trenching done before the ground hardened. They worked in sections through April and into May. Corbett installed clusters of the surplus culverts at 3 critical points, places where his drainage channels intersected, where runoff from the upper ridge converged, and where his main farm lane crossed tributary ditches. He didn't use all 12 at once. He sized each installation carefully, matching the culvert diameter to the expected flow volume based on the drainage area feeding each point. 2 at the upper crossing, 4 in a parallel bundle at the mid-property ditch, and the remaining 6 at the lowest and most critical crossing, the one closest to the county road, where water had always tried to find a way through, and where a failure would seal his farm off from the outside world entirely. Dale Sutherfield drove by one afternoon while they were trenching and rolled down his window. "You're going to a lot of work for some old culverts nobody wanted," he said, not unkindly. Corbett stood up from the trench, wiped his hands on his jeans. "Old pipe still moves water," he said, "if it's placed right." Dale nodded like he sort of understood and drove on. The summer was dry. Nothing happened that would have proven anything to anyone. The culverts sat in their trenches, invisible, doing nothing visibly useful. By August, a few of the neighbors had forgotten about the auction entirely. Then came October. It started on a Wednesday, a slow, steady rain that the forecast said would pass by Thursday morning. It didn't pass. A slow-moving, low-pressure system stalled over the region, and the rain continued through Thursday, Friday, and into Saturday. Steady and persistent, never dramatic, just relentless. 2.5 inches the first day, nearly 4 the second, another 1.5 inches before noon on Saturday. The ridge above Kettlemore was saturated by Thursday night. By Friday afternoon, the drainage ditches were running full. By Saturday morning, they were running over. The county road that connected the cluster of farms south of Kettlemore, including the Sutherfield operation, the Mangan place, 3 smaller homesteads, and Corbett's farm, crossed 2 low points where drainage ditches passed under the road. Both culverts under those county crossings were decades old and undersized for current watershed conditions. They couldn't pass the volume trying to move through them. The first road failure happened Saturday at 11 in the morning. The culvert at the lower county crossing blew out from hydrostatic pressure. The road surface collapsed inward, and within 2 hours there was a 4-foot gap in the asphalt. The second crossing went by mid-afternoon. Every farm south of the ridge was cut off. Feed deliveries couldn't get through. A cattle truck scheduled to pick up at the Sutherfield operation had to turn back. The Mangan family's low corner flooded out 300 feet of soybeans they'd kept in storage. A retired couple on the last homestead couldn't get out for medication. Corbett's lane held. The water came down off the ridge and hit his first culvert cluster, moved through the parallel bundle at mid-property, and passed through the 6-culvert installation at his lowest crossing without overtopping. The flow was fast and loud, but it moved. His lane stayed intact, both from his fields down to the county road connection and across every internal crossing on his property. While every neighboring farm sat stranded behind washed-out approaches and failed crossings, Corbett's infrastructure handled what the storm threw at it. He could move. Nobody else could. He spent Saturday afternoon helping where he could, running supplies in his pickup, ferrying the retired couple out through a route that only stayed open because his lane had held, coordinating with emergency management on access. Dale Sutherfield stood at the edge of the washed-out county road late that afternoon, watching the water still moving, looking at the gap where the road used to be. He asked Corbett how the lane had held. Corbett explained it plainly. Culvert sizing, drainage area calculations, the relationship between upland clearing and increased runoff velocity, the way water finds the path of least resistance and overwhelms anything not sized to receive it. He said Virgil Couch had taught him most of it, and Virgil had learned it in 30 years on the county road crew. Dale was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I've been farming next to you for 22 years, and I didn't know any of that." As the conservation writer Aldo Leopold once observed, the land is not merely soil, it is a fountain of energy flowing through a circuit of soils, plants, and animals. Water is part of that circuit, and it doesn't ask permission before it moves. The county repaired the road over the following 3 weeks. The Sutherfield and Mangan operations eventually recovered, though the losses from those 10 days were real and measurable. Nobody laughed about the culverts anymore. A few neighbors started asking Corbett questions about their own drainage, about culvert sizing, about how to read a watershed. He answered every question the same way Virgil Couch had answered his, plainly, without showing off, over a cup of coffee. $40 apiece for 12 culverts nobody wanted. The kind of investment that looks like waste until the water comes. The strongest farms aren't built in the crisis. They're built in the quiet years before it, by the people paying attention when everyone else has stopped looking.